This is News of Today, the first AI-generated news podcast with all the news that you should know. Produced by Summ-it.
Today's stack is mostly news from Belgium and the Netherlands.
Sounds interesting. What kind of stuff?
A whole lot, actually. We've got everything from political dramas, some international incidents that are kind of concerning. Yeah. Even a peek into youth culture. And then to tie that all off, there's this scientific journal article that has some pretty big implications for the world of cryptocurrency.
Well, I guess that makes sense. Cryptocurrency is definitely global these days.
Definitely. All right, let's jump right in. So let's start with the political landscape in Belgium. It's been, months since their elections? And they're still trying to form a government.
It really is taking a while. I mean, forming a coalition government is never easy, especially with so many parties involved.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's proving to be pretty challenging from what I gathered reading through these articles.
Right.
Bart de Wever, the formateur, he's the guy tasked with putting it all together. He's trying to juggle, 5 parties? NVA, Voorroet, CDMV, MR, and Les Engagés.
You got it.
Yeah.
And each one of those parties brings its own priorities to the table.
Yeah.
So finding that common ground, that's the tricky part. It's not a simple negotiation.
No, not at all. And the sources I read, they highlighted some pretty serious conflicts, particularly when it comes to fiscal policy. Taxes, spending, all that.
Makes sense. Those are always hot-button issues, especially when you've got a coalition government trying to find a compromise that everyone can live with.
Exactly. And this isn't just some political game, These decisions have real-world consequences. I mean, this affects people's lives, the overall economy. It's a big deal.
Absolutely. And you can't forget the international implications either.
Right.
Belgium plays a role in the European Union. And if they don't have a stable government in place, well, that can impact decisions on trade, regulations, even international relations. Everything's connected.
It's like a domino effect. One thing leads to another, and suddenly the whole system is wobbling.
And that's why King Philip extending de Wever's mandate is significant. It shows just how important it is to get this government formed. And soon. They're hoping for a breakthrough, early next year. But the longer it drags on, the more uncertainty it creates, both domestically and internationally.
Uncertainty, huh? Seems to be a recurring theme across Europe these days.
You're telling me?
Speaking of which, France. Their previous government just lost a no-confidence vote. Did you hear about this?
Oh, yeah. That was big news. Lots of buzz about the new prime minister, François Bayrou, and the cabinet he's put together.
Raising some eyebrows for sure.
Definitely an interesting mix, to say the least. Bringing in 2 former prime ministers, Elizabeth Borne and Manuel Valls, that's got to be unprecedented.
And each of them, they come with their own baggage. Their own political history, which is already sparking criticism. And from both sides, the left and the right.
Not an easy position to be in.
One article I read even called it a coalition of failure. The left is criticizing the inclusion of figures they see as responsible for past economic struggles, while the right slams the entire government as basically a mishmash of prior mistakes.
A lot of pressure on them for sure. And all eyes are going to be on that confidence vote in mid-January. Their survival's hanging by a thread. And you know what? If they fall, the impact could be huge. Think about it. Domestic reforms, France's position on the world stage, everything's on the line.
So we've got Belgium kind of in limbo, France teetering on the edge. Meanwhile, across the Eurozone, Christine Lagarde, the president of the European Central Bank, she's sounding a bit cautious about inflation.
Oh, yeah, that was interesting. Seems like she's trying to strike a balance. On one hand, acknowledging that they're getting closer to their midterm inflation target, which is good news, right? But then she also throws in this warning against complacency. Inflation for services is still high. Bringing it down further, that's going to require some careful maneuvering.
A delicate balancing act, I guess you could say.
Exactly.
The sources also touched on her concerns about, the impact of global trade tensions. She specifically mentioned the pushback against some of Trump's tariff threats as an example of how these trade wars can end up hurting everyone involved.
It's a good point. We can't forget that we live in a globalized world. Economic policies in one country, they can have ripple effects across the globe.
Yeah.
It's like throwing a stone in a pond. Businesses, consumers, everyone feels it.
Makes you realize how interconnected we really are.
Definitely.
Now, shifting gears a bit, this next story has some pretty serious implications for the Middle East. Israel just officially confirmed their involvement in the assassination of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh.
That's right. And for months, that attack was shrouded in secrecy. It happened in Iran last summer. No one really knew for sure who was behind it. But now, Israel's defense minister, Yisrael Katz, he's come out and confirmed their role. Adds another layer to an already very complex situation.
Definitely adds fuel to the fire. And what's even more concerning is that this wasn't a one-off, According to the sources I read, this was part of a larger strategy targeting key figures in both Hamas and Hezbollah.
You're talking about Yahya Sinwar, who took over Hamas after Haniyeh, and Hassan Nasrallah, the leader of Hezbollah.
The very same, both eliminated by Israeli forces. It paints a pretty grim picture of the situation. Each attack just raises the stakes, fueling this cycle of violence. It's hard to see how it ends peacefully.
It's a recipe for instability, that's for sure. Increased military activity, heightened security concerns. And you can't rule out the possibility of a wider conflict either. The entire region is on edge.
It makes you wonder where it all goes from here. Scary stuff.
It is.
Okay, now let's turn our attention to Germany. There was a recent terrorist attack on a Christmas market there.
Awful. Really tragic, and it's raising a lot of questions about their security protocols, their intelligence sharing.
Yeah, and here's the thing. German authorities, they actually received 4 warnings about the attacker, this guy named Taleb al-Abdounbossen. 4 warnings from Saudi Arabia, no less. And yet, they didn't act on them. He'd expressed extremist views, even threatened acts of terrorism in the past. But he was still granted asylum. It's a failure to connect the dots, plain and simple. And now there's this debate raging about how effective their intelligence sharing really is, how they handle potential threats.
It's a tough situation. It raises all these questions about how to balance security concerns with the rights and freedoms of individuals, especially those seeking asylum. It's a dilemma that governments all over the world are grappling with. No easy answers.
For sure. And while we're on the topic of challenges facing governments, there's this whole debate brewing in the U.S. about banning TikTok. It's set to take effect in January 2025.
Ugh, TikTok. That's a can of worms. I mean, I get the concerns about data security, the potential for foreign influence, given it's a Chinese company. But a ban? That's a big deal. And it could have some pretty hefty economic consequences. Millions of Americans use that platform,
Exactly. And not just individuals, but businesses and content creators, too. The sources we looked at highlighted the potential for job losses, revenue decline, and even a shift in advertising dollars to competing platforms. It's a mess.
It really shows how technology, economics, national security, they're all intertwined these days. It's hard to separate one from the other.
Absolutely. Okay, hopping over to South Korea now. They're dealing with some major political turmoil, still reeling from the ousting of President Yoon Suk-yeol.
It's crazy, right? And now, the opposition party, they're actually trying to impeach the acting president, Han Duck-soo. Talk about a power struggle. It shows just how deep the political divisions run in South Korea.
It's important to remember the context here, too. Yoon was removed from office by parliament after he declared a state of emergency. It all stemmed from this clash with the opposition. And now this impeachment attempt. It just adds another layer of uncertainty to an already volatile situation. It makes you wonder what's next.
Definitely keeps you on the edge of your seat. And for the average South Korean, all this instability, it impacts everything. Economic policies, international relations, their daily lives. It's a reminder that even in well-established democracies, these power struggles can have some pretty far-reaching consequences.
It's a reminder that nothing's ever truly stable, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose so.
All right, now for a story that sounds like something straight out of a cybercrime thriller. Japan and the U.S., they're accusing North Korean hackers of stealing hundreds of millions of dollars in cryptocurrency.
Yeah, that was a big one. From the platform DMM Bitcoin.
DMM Bitcoin, okay.
The group responsible, they call themselves Trader. And they're believed to be part of the Lazarus Group. You've probably heard of them.
Rings a bell, yeah.
They're a pretty sophisticated hacking group with ties to the North Korean regime. The FBI even described it as a targeted social engineering operation. Shows just how clever these hackers can be.
And what really stood out to me was how they actually tricked a DMM Bitcoin employee into installing malicious code, gave them access to the platform's funds. Just goes to show even the most secure systems, they're vulnerable to human error and social engineering tactics.
It's a constant cat and mouse game. And this incident just highlights the growing threat of cybercrime. I mean, as more of our lives move online, more of our assets become digital, the stakes just get higher. The cryptocurrency world, with all its promises of anonymity and decentralization, well, it's become a prime target.
A digital Wild West, almost.
Yeah, you could say that.
And speaking of cryptocurrency, we've got this source that delves into a potential threat from a completely different angle. Quantum computing.
Ah, yes, quantum computing, the next frontier. and potentially a game changer for a lot of things, including cryptocurrency.
It's all very sci-fi sounding to me.
Well, it might sound like science fiction, but it's becoming reality. Google's new quantum chip, Willow, it's powerful enough to potentially crack the cryptographic algorithms that protect Bitcoin, making it vulnerable to attack. And that's a big deal.
So it's not just hackers we have to worry about, but also these advancements in technology that could render current security measures obsolete.
It's a race against time,
Yeah.
in a way, a race to stay one step ahead.
You're not kidding. Okay, ready for a story that's a little out there.
Hit me with it.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump, he's demanding the return of the Panama Canal to the United States.
Wait, what? The Panama Canal? Like the one in Panama?
The one and only. His claim is that U.S. ships are being overcharged and that Panama isn't managing it fairly. Unsurprisingly, Panama had a pretty strong response. They basically told him to get lost.
Yeah, I bet they did. I mean, it's their canal, right?
Right. But even though it sounds kind of crazy, it's important to remember the history here. The U.S., they did play a big role in building the canal, and they controlled it for decades before handing it over to Panama in 1999. So it's not completely out of left field.
I guess not. It's like a ghost from the past coming back to haunt us.
Yeah.
But it just goes to show the past never really stays buried, does it? And those old power dynamics, they still linger.
It's all about control in the end. Okay, moving on to another controversial figure, Elon Musk. He's been making some moves that suggest he's trying to influence European politics, and not in a subtle way either.
Oh yeah, Elon. Always stirring the pot. What's he up to now?
He's been publicly backing Germany's Alternative for Deutschland party, the AfD.
Like the right-wing party?
And not only that, he's also reportedly pledged financial support to Nigel Farage's Reform UK party. So he's throwing his weight around, no doubt, and it's got everyone wondering, what's his game plan?
It's a good question. Some people see it as a power play, a way to exert his influence on a global scale. Others think it's more ideological, that he genuinely aligns with these parties' views. Whatever the reason, it's a reminder that these individuals, with their vast wealth and influence, they can have a real impact on the political landscape.
And not just in the US, but all over the world.
Scary thought, isn't it?
A little bit. Okay, time for a story that highlights the double-edged sword of social media, a gathering of 1,000 people at the Atomium in Brussels.
The Atomium, I love that place.
Right. Well, this event, it was organized by a bunch of social media influencers, billed as a big gift giveaway, but things got out of control fast.
Oh no, what happened?
The atmosphere got tense, people started setting off fireworks, and the police had to intervene, even used a water cannon to disperse the crowd. It was chaos.
Yikes. Sounds like a recipe for disaster.
It was. And it just highlights the power of social media to mobilize large crowds. But it also shows the potential for things to go sideways really quickly. Makes you think about the responsibility of these influencers, They've got this huge reach, this power to influence their followers. They need to be careful.
I agree. And it puts a spotlight on the challenges faced by authorities, too. I mean, how do you manage these massive crowds, maintain public safety in an age where social media can amplify messages so quickly? It's a whole new landscape.
It really is. All right, let's end this section on a more positive note, shall we? There's this really heartwarming story from Ghent about a program designed to support hikikomori youth.
Hikikomori, I haven't heard that term before.
So it's this phenomenon where individuals, usually young people, they withdraw from society, isolate themselves in their homes for long periods, sometimes months, even years. And this programming Ghent, they're working to reach out to these kids, help them reintegrate into society.
That's fantastic. What an important initiative.
And the way they're doing it is pretty interesting. They're actually using online platforms like Discord to connect with these individuals. It's a safe space for them to communicate, get support. And then they also offer low-threshold activities in the real world to help them ease back into social situations. Baby steps.
It's brilliant, really, using technology to combat the negative effects of technology. And it shows the power of human connection. Even in our increasingly digital world, we still need that face-to-face interaction, that sense of community.
It's a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there's always hope. And there are people out there who care, who are working to make a difference.
Couldn't agree more.
Okay, before we take a break, let's squeeze in a couple of mind-blowing scientific developments. First up, NASA's Parker Solar Probe just made a groundbreaking close pass by the sun. It flew right through the corona, collecting all sorts of data.
Wow, that's incredible. I mean, that's got to be pushing the boundaries of what's possible, right?
Definitely. And the data they collected, it could be huge, helping scientists understand solar flares, coronal mass ejections, all sorts of phenomena that can impact us here on Earth. Think about it. Our satellites, our power grids, everything's connected to the sun.
It's a reminder that space exploration, it's not just about what's out there. It's about understanding our own place in the universe and how everything's connected.
Absolutely. And speaking of pushing boundaries, this next one's really cool. Researchers are getting closer to deciphering animal language using AI.
Whoa, seriously, like talking to animals?
Well, not quite talking yet, but they're making progress. They're using these sophisticated algorithms to analyze animal sounds, behaviors, all sorts of data. And they're starting to see patterns, make connections. It's still early days, but the possibilities are mind-blowing.
Imagine being able to understand what whales are saying, or dolphins, or even our pets. It would completely change our relationship with the animal world.
It would be revolutionary. But hey, we'll dive deeper into that and a whole lot more after a quick break. Stay tuned.
Can't wait. I mean, just imagine deciphering animal communication. Like, what if we discover that, I don't know, that they have these complex social structures or political systems even, or maybe they even have philosophical debates that we've just been totally oblivious to.
It's kind of mind-boggling, isn't it? Like, it challenges our whole idea of what intelligence is, what it means to be human.
Right. Like, are we really so special?
And then there's the ethical questions, too. Like, if we can understand animals better, if we know what they're thinking and feeling, how does that change how we treat them?
It's a whole new world of possibilities and a whole lot of responsibility.
No doubt. Okay, let's bring it back down to Earth for a minute, shall we? Back to the world of human drama. Elon Musk, he's back in the headlines again, unsurprisingly. And this time, it's his stance on that proposed TikTok ban in the U.S.
Oh, he couldn't resist weighing in on that, could he?
Nope. He's calling it an attack on free speech.
Well, that's certainly sparked a debate, hasn't it?
You could say that. Some people are praising him for defending digital freedom. Others are calling him a hypocrite. You know, given his own history of moderating content on Twitter.
Yeah, he's not exactly known for being a free speech absolutist, is he?
Not really, but it's interesting how he's positioned himself as this champion of free speech, and it all plays into his growing political influence, which we talked about earlier.
It's a reminder that these tech giants, they have a lot of power, and they're not afraid to use it.
It's a little unsettling, to be honest. Like, who gets to decide what we can and can't say online? Who gets to control the narrative?
It's a question we need to be asking ourselves. And it's not an easy one to answer.
Definitely not. Okay, speaking of control, the French government, they've launched this new initiative to combat what they're calling digital addiction among young people.
Interesting. What's their approach?
Basically, they're trying to limit screen time, promote outdoor activities, encourage face-to-face interactions, you know, all that good stuff.
Sounds like a pretty sensible approach, actually. I mean, we all know that too much screen time can be bad for you, especially for kids.
Right. And their brains are still developing, so it's important to find that balance, you know? Technology can be a great tool, but it's easy to get sucked in.
It's all about moderation, isn't it? Like anything else.
Exactly. Okay, let's shift gears again. Over to the global economy. The price of oil, it's just surged to a new high.
Really? What's driving that?
Well, it's a perfect storm of factors, it seems. Increased demand as economies are recovering from the pandemic, ongoing geopolitical tensions in the Middle East, and then there's the growing concern about supply disruptions, you know, with all the extreme weather events we've been seeing lately.
Yeah, that makes sense. Climate change is definitely having an impact on the energy sector.
It's all connected, isn't it?
It really is. And it just underscores the need to transition to more sustainable and resilient energy sources.
Yeah.
We can't keep relying on fossil fuels forever. It's just not sustainable economically or environmentally.
Absolutely. All right, time for something a little later, though no less intriguing. Have you heard of this new cryptocurrency, Dogemoon?
Dogemoon, is that like a meme coin?
You guessed it. It's similar to Dogecoin, you know, that one that Elon Musk was obsessed with for a while.
Oh yeah, Doge. That was a wild ride.
So Dogemoon, it's been gaining traction on social media, and it's Well, it's basically just speculation and hype. There's no real underlying technology or anything.
So it's just a gamble then?
Pretty much. But it's fascinating to see how these meme coins capture the public's imagination. It's like everyone's trying to get rich quick.
And some people do, right? Which just fuels the frenzy even more.
Exactly. It's a reminder that the cryptocurrency market, it's volatile, it's risky, but it's also full of surprises.
You never know what's going to take off next. Okay, let's move on to something a little more grounded. Scientists have developed this new gene therapy that's showing some incredible results.
Oh, yeah, I read about this. It's for a rare genetic disorder, right?
That's right. And it seems to be really effective. It targets the underlying genetic mutation and actually corrects it. It's a huge breakthrough.
It's amazing what science can do these days. It's like we're rewriting the code of life.
It's pretty mind-blowing. And this could have huge implications for other genetic disorders, too. It's like a whole new era of medicine. Personalized, targeted treatments.
It's exciting, but also a little scary. Like, where do we draw the line? What are the ethical considerations?
Those are important questions, for sure. And we need to have those conversations sooner rather than later.
We do. Okay, ready for a dose of pure joy?
Always.
So over in the Netherlands, there's this group of artists who've created this giant inflatable sculpture of a rubber ducky.
A giant rubber ducky. That sounds adorable.
It is. And they've been floating it down canals and rivers, just bringing smiles to everyone's faces.
I love it. It's like a symbol of, I don't know, innocence and happiness.
Exactly. It's a reminder that we need to find those moments of joy, even in the midst of all the chaos.
We do. Sometimes it's the simple things that matter most.
Couldn't agree more. Okay, back to some more serious stuff. A team of engineers in Belgium, they've come up with this new type of sustainable building material. It's made from recycled plastic waste.
Wow, that's innovative. And so important, too. We need to find ways to reduce our reliance on traditional building materials.
For sure. And this new material, it's lightweight, durable, affordable. It's like a win-win all around.
It's a great example of the circular economy in action. Taking something that we normally throw away and turning it into something useful.
Exactly. It's all about finding those creative solutions. And speaking of creativity, this next one is pretty futuristic. Over in Germany, a company has unveiled a prototype for a flying car.
A flying car, like the Jetsons.
Pretty much. It can drive on roads and take off vertically like a helicopter.
That's incredible. I mean, it's something that people have been dreaming about for decades.
And now it seems like it's actually going to happen. They're planning to release it in the next few years.
Imagine that. No more traffic jams. Just soaring above it all.
It sounds amazing, but I also wonder about the practicalities of it all, the safety regulations, the infrastructure. It's going to be a whole new world.
It will be. But hey, that's progress, right?
I guess so. All right, let's head over to the UK now. The Prime Minister just called a snap election totally out of the blue.
Wow, that's a bold move. What's the thinking behind that?
Nobody really knows for sure, but it's thrown the political landscape into chaos. All the parties are scrambling to get ready.
It's a gamble, that's for sure. But it could pay off. He might be able to strengthen his position, reshape the balance of power.
We'll have to wait and see. But it's a reminder that in politics, anything can happen.
That's for sure. It's a constantly evolving game.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. From animal communication to meme coins to flying cars, it's been a wild ride.
It has. And we've seen how all these seemingly disparate events are actually connected. It's like a giant web.
It is. And before we wrap up this section, I'd love to hear what stood out to you the most.
That's a tough one. I think I'm most struck by the theme of innovation and disruption. We're living in a time of such rapid change, and it's both exciting and a little terrifying.
I agree. And that brings us to a final thought for our listeners to ponder. Given the rapid pace of technological advancements, especially in fields like AI and gene editing, how do we ensure that these technologies are developed and used ethically? That's something we'll explore further in the seat. Part 3 of our deep dive. Stay tuned.
Welcome back. So, before the break, we left you with a pretty big question.
The big one, yeah. How do we make sure that these incredibly powerful technologies like AI and gene editing, how do we make sure they're used ethically? It's a conversation we need to be having.
It feels like it's becoming more urgent every day. These technologies, they're advancing so quickly.
They really are. And we need to be thinking about the consequences. The intended ones, sure, but also the unintended ones. We need some guardrails in place. We need to make sure these innovations actually benefit humanity, not harm it.
It's like we're trying to balance progress with responsibility, and it's not easy. Definitely not. We want to embrace the potential, right? I mean, these technologies, they could improve lives, solve some of our biggest challenges, but we also need to proceed with caution. Think about the ethical implications, the potential risks.
So where do we even begin?
Well, I think transparency is key. The whole process, the development, the deployment, it all needs to be open, accountable. We need to involve diverse perspectives, engage the public.
So it can't just be scientists and tech companies making decisions behind closed doors.
Exactly. This needs to be a conversation that involves everyone, and it needs to happen now, before it's too late, before these technologies become so embedded in our lives that it's impossible to course correct.
Speaking of course correction, there's some good news on the environmental front. A major international agreement was just reached to protect the Amazon rainforest.
That's fantastic news. I mean, the Amazon, it's vital. It plays such a crucial role in regulating the Earth's climate and the biodiversity there. Incredible. It needs to be protected.
Absolutely. And this agreement, it involves several countries, Brazil, Colombia, Peru. They're all committed to curbing deforestation, promoting sustainable development. It's a huge step forward.
It really is. And it shows that international cooperation, it is possible. Even on these really complex issues, it gives me some hope for the future.
Me too. Okay, back to the world of science. Researchers have developed an AI system that can predict the spread of infectious diseases.
Whoa, that's pretty amazing. Like, how does that even work?
It's pretty complex, but basically it uses machine learning algorithms to analyze tons of data. Travel patterns, climate conditions, even social media activity. And it can identify potential outbreaks and predict how they'll spread.
That's incredible. It's like having a crystal ball for disease outbreaks.
Right. And this could be huge for public health officials. They can take proactive measures, contain outbreaks before they get out of control, protect vulnerable populations.
It could potentially save so many lives.
It really could. All right, now for a story that's just pure heartwarming goodness. Over in Belgium, a group of school children raised thousands of euros to help a local animal shelter.
Oh, that's so sweet.
Right. The shelter was struggling financially, and these kids, they organized bake sales, car washes, even a sponsored silence. They were determined to help.
That's amazing. Kids these days, they give me hope for the future.
Me too. It's a reminder that even small acts of kindness, they can make a big difference.
Absolutely.
Okay, ready for a little mystery?
Get me.
Astronomers have detected this strange signal coming from deep space, and they have no idea what it is.
Ooh, intriguing. What are they saying?
Well, it's unlike anything they've ever seen before. Some think it's a natural phenomenon, but others, well, they're not ruling out the possibility of extraterrestrial intelligence.
Aliens. That's kind of cool.
I know, right? It makes you realize how much we don't know about the universe and how much there is still to discover.
It's pretty humbling when you think about it. Like, we're just a tiny speck in this vast cosmos, and who knows what else is out there.
Exactly. And that about wraps up our deep dive for today. We've covered a lot of ground, huh? From the ethical challenges of emerging technologies to the awe-inspiring mysteries of the universe.
It's been quite a journey.
It has. And we hope it's left you feeling informed, inspired, and maybe even a little more curious about the world around you.
Curiosity is key, so keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.
Until next time.